Today we continue our NHL offseason plan series. We're now the 28th ranked team in the NHL, the Montreal Canadiens. What will we see from them this offseason? What do they have for internal business? What will they do with the 2023 NHL Draft? Will we see some more significant trades? We'll discuss all that coming up next. So welcome back to another video here, Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned today, we're analyzing the Montreal Canadiens 2023 offseason and what we're going to see for expectations on what they're going to do. But first, we're going to recap last season, take a look at how things went, look at some key team stats, analyze their salary cap situation and what they've done for other moves recently. Take a look at their internal business for restricted free agents. Who are the UFAs of the team? Will they be back? And then analyze the top questions facing this franchise as the offseason gets into full swing here. So let's first recap the 22-23 season for the 28th ranked team in the NHL, the Montreal Canadiens. Now, they finished with a record of 31, 45, and 6 for 68 points. Obviously not a great result. They scored 232 goals for 26th best in the league, while giving up 307, which was 29th best. Overall team plus minus for minus 75 in a goal differential department. Certainly not good, but at the same time, we weren't expecting the Hens to tear it up this year, so none of these results are shocking based on where they were projected to be. Power play wise, they had a success rate of 16.1%, not great, 29th best. The PK was rough as well, 72.7 for 29th best. So 29th in both special teams categories. Of course, we've seen Montreal deal with a ton of injuries this year. Of course, they had to go the whole season with no Carey Price. Of course, he played very little the year before. So obviously, no Carey Price. It was a big deal. Brendan Gallagher, another season missing significant periods of time. We've seen other players as well. Sean Monahan came in from Calgary, had a good start, and then hasn't played since Christmas or in sometime in December. We've seen Armia miss a long time this year. Byron missed the entire season as well. Edmondson missed significant time. Matheson missed a chunk. The different goaltenders like Jake Allen was hurt a couple times this year. Nothing for too long term, but still, this team is absolutely ravaged by injuries, not to mention top young sniper Cole Caulfield, who had, again, a really solid start to the season, and then ended up with a shoulder injury that required surgery and was done for the year. So I don't know exactly where games that Cole Caulfield missed, but it was around like 30 games. It was substantial, and they had a lot of time missed. I mean, injuries played a role. Would they have been better if they could have stayed healthy? Absolutely, they could have been. I don't think they would have been a playoff team, but it definitely would have been better and stronger. But this, at the same time, though, it's a really deep draft. I don't know that you'd want to be picking too much lower. So from that perspective, at least, it's good. But at the same time, you don't want to see these players go through, everything that they did when it comes to the injuries. Of course, it was the first full year for Marty St. Louis behind the bench and Kent Hughes in the front office. So they're still leaving their mark on this team and shaping this team for the future. The trade deadline, we've seen them pull off a trade, which to me looked like a pretty good deal. They moved Evgeny Dadonov to the Dallas Stars for Denis Gurianov. Gurianov is a good but inconsistent player. Had his moments for Montreal. Certainly looks like it's a decent trade so far. Cap-wise, going into the offseason, they don't have a great cap situation. That's a big part of the problem. To be near the bottom of the standings and to have as much money tied up as what they do is certainly problematic. It's going to be a big focus for the management team. But right now, for next year, they only have $9.6 million in available cap space. There's already $73.8 million tied up. Now, of course, they do have the Carey Price contract. It's pretty much confirmed that Price is never going to play again. They can use his contract to go through LTIR and spend by the $10 million or whatever over the cap. So the cap space that they have, it's not great, but it can be expanded through the LTIR. But I'm sure they would rather not have to do that. But it is a tool that's at their disposal should they need it. And I suspect, barring significant change here, that it's a good chance that they're going to. But I'm sure that Kent Hughes is going to make moves to try to avoid that. But let's take a look at their internal business here. Restricted and unrestricted free agents. Certainly some interesting names here of things they need to do. Of course, right at the top of the list of RFAs is Cole Caulfield. I'm sure the Habs would prefer to sign him on a long-term deal. It's going to be expensive. He's a proven goal scorer at this point in his career. He's also dealt with some injuries, but still, he's proven that he can be a legit top scorer. So I think he's going to get, a longer term, or at least that's what the team would like. Whether or not he wants to go long term, I don't know. I mean, he's also had a couple of shorter, stints with the goals, given the seasons and how they've gone. He might prefer a bridge deal. I don't know. But either way, he needs a new contract. It's going to be a big debate. So far, there's no real word of negotiations. I don't think they've gotten too far with things, but we'll see. I'm sure Montreal will love to line him up in a long-term deal and get him signed to play with Nick Suzuki for another 7-8 years. Dennis Gurianov, the recently acquired forward from Dallas, also is an RFA. Michael Bozzetta is an RFA. Raphael Harvey-Pinard, who was like a newfound goal scorer, it's kind of come out of nowhere, got called up and just started scoring at will, which was crazy. Fans love him, and he's done really good things in a short amount of time, so I suspect he'll get a decent contract. I like Caulfield, who's a little bit more established. I don't think he's going to get that 7 or 8 year deal. He's probably looking at a 3-year, maybe a 4-year deal. Jesse Ylonen, also another young player who's coming up to being an RFA. On the UFA side, you've got Chris Tierney, who came over via, I think, through the waiver wire from Florida. He likely won't be back. Alex Belzil, he might be back. Hard to say. He's an older player who get to make his NHL debut this year with the Habs. Scored his first NHL goal. It's a good story. But if he gets a contract, likely will have to be a 2-way deal again. He could be good help for Laval and a call-up option. We'll see. Jonathan Drouin, of course, is a UFA. Sean Monahan and Paul Byron. Debatable who's back. I was going to say Drouin is likely not back. Byron is rumored to be retiring. I believe that the speculation is that he's been having some conversations with Habs management about maybe getting into a different role with the team, maybe working in player development or something like that. So it's possible that Byron retires and goes to work for the Habs in a different job. Now, that's not a guarantee. It sounded like if they're willing to do that, then he'll retire and do it. And if not, he may seek a contract elsewhere. But he's missed so much time with injuries that it's not going to be easy to get a deal. He might have to go on a PTO somewhere if they'll give him one. Sean Monahan, I do wonder as well. I think he'll get signed somewhere. But again, after missing the amount of time he did, it's not going to be long-term, and it's not going to be for very much money. But if he wants to keep playing, he's going to have to do a prove-it-to-me deal at this point in his career, which would be good for the team in their cap situation if he can play well. But we'll see how things go. If he signs a 1-year deal as well, could be somebody they can flip to the deadline if he has a more healthy, productive year. Now, what are the top questions facing this team heading into the offseason? Well, first off, I think I said they need to find some salary cap flexibility. I do wonder what other veteran players they might look to move on from. There's been lots of rumors, lots of speculation. Guys like Mike Hoffman, Joel Edmondson, UL Armia could all be players that Ken Hughes and the Habs are having conversations around, trying to move. I think they would have a preference to move all if they could. We'll see what happens. Obviously, easier said than done, but they're definitely all players that are in the rumor mill having discussions and would be preferred to be moved on from. Obviously, getting Cole Caulfield under contract is a paramount. Certainly right near the top of the list, if not at the top of things to accomplish this offseason, preferably on a long-term deal. It would not be surprising if this contract drags on and through most of the summer, maybe even goes to the beginning of training camp or something like that. And it's hard to say. It might boil out if they need the LTI airspace around as well. So we'll see. But Caulfield's signing and getting that contract done is going to be huge for this team, no matter how you shake it. Goaltending is a big question as well. Caden Primo is not going to be waivers exempt anymore, so he's not going to be able to just go to the minors without going through waivers. So obviously, I think they'd be a high risk to lose him. Are they going to want to do that? Probably not. Do they want to carry 3 goaltenders? Probably not. Fair to say that Samuel Montembeault was their best goaltender, most consistent goalie all year. Jake Allen had a tough season, both with a few injuries and not as great a result as Montembeault. I think he's still a good goaltender, can still prove to be valuable. I do kind of half wonder, though, if Montreal would consider trading him. I don't think they had that in mind. I don't know if it's really top of mind for them to do so. They gave him a 2-year extension last year that's going to be kicking in. So when they gave him that extension, I'm sure that wasn't something that was planned. But the way things have gone, Montembeault has outplayed him. He's younger. He's played better. And it's hard to say. Then there's Primo. Or is Primo the guy that gets traded? Because at this point, they haven't really been confident and comfortable enough to call him up and give him a longer-term look at the NHL. So I do wonder, one of them likely gets dealt. It's just a matter of who is it going to be. If they still feel that Primo can be the goalie of the future, that I do wonder if Jake might be the guy that goes. We'll have to wait and see. But that situation is definitely one to monitor. Something they're going to have to, certainly analyze and decide what to do there. They also have an abundance of young defensemen that have been in the organization, a lot of which come from college hockey that they've signed, that they drafted, and a few others from other places. So I do wonder if they're going to be looking to make some trades to make improvements in other areas, if some of those, one or two of those guys could be included. I mean, look at all the defensemen that they've brought in, that they've either come from junior hockey or college hockey through their draft prospects here, whether it be Caden Gooley, Jordan Harris, Arbor Jackeye. They still have other defensemen as well, like Struble that came out of college. And then there's others as well. Still on Kivacevic, who came over via waiver wire early in the season. He was a good pickup too. Certainly there's a lot of good young defensemen. They can't all get a role. And then Habs blue line, they have a few veterans who are likely going to keep around. If Edmonton's dealt, they still have guys like David Savard that's there, Mike Matheson, for example. I don't think Chris Weidman comes back. He's another UFA, actually, that I forgot to put on that list. He's an expiring contract. So certainly, I think they might be able to use some of the prospects because there's just so many if they want to find an upgrade for another part of the team. So don't be shocked if they do move a prospect or two. They also have a lot in the forward group too. There's a lot of guys coming that can play, and it's a matter of getting them more room. I do think that Owen Beck might stand a good chance to make this team in a junior or in a training camp next year. He had a real good junior season, suffering be turning pro next year, so we'll see where that goes. At the draft, the 2023 draft, they're going to be picking pretty high. There was a rumor going around from Montreal media that they have a heavy interest in Matvei Michkov if he's available. When they select, of course, Nick Bobroff, their director of amateur scouting, obviously Russian background, would be very familiar with this player, has a lot of Russian ties, and there's a lot of speculation that he's going to be pushing to draft him if he's there. That makes a lot of sense. He's a really good player, and if any team that drafts him, they have to have some patience because he might not be coming over for a couple of years, but still, he's a terrific player. And a few years back, was in the conversation with Bedard for the top two spots, and he's kind of fallen back partly because of the Russian factor, and I think a little bit based on performance, but still, this guy's a phenomenal player. And I do wonder, based on where they're picking here, if it's a possibility we might see that. If he's on the board when Montreal goes to select, we'll see. Now, Montreal, of course, could have some luck and get into the 1 or 2 spots. That would be phenomenal for them. They would get Bernard or Fantilli, so that would be absolutely huge. Otherwise, they're going to either stay in number 5 or go down to possibly 6 or 7. And they do drop in the draft. I don't know that a player like Michkov is going to be available to them. Be curious to see which way they go because they have lots of options. There's a lot of players that could fall in that 5 to 10 range. Be curious to see which direction they go. They have multiple first-round picks as well. Obviously, they have the first-rounder as well for Florida. So I do wonder if we're going to see a similar type of trade that it made last year for Kirby Dach with multiple first-round picks. I don't have any doubt that they'll be trying to see if there's a deal out there with the same type of thing. Obviously, last year they also traded Romanov to be part of that deal to get Dach. But of course, they traded Romanov. They get the first rounder, flipped that for Kirby Dach. Could they do it again? There's lots of players that could be involved. We know that Montreal this offseason is a good chance, according to a lot of NHL insiders, will be making a move to get Pierre-Luc Dubois out of Winnipeg. We all know he wants to be in Montreal long-term. It's believed Montreal wants to get him there as well. That would be very challenging, though, with their cap space the way it is. So they're going to probably be harder work to free up some space if they really want to make that happen. But is it possible they go to the 2023 draft, trade for Dubois, draft Michkov, maybe even use the other pick to do something else? Well, actually, that pick, the Florida pick, if they do trade for Dubois, would likely go in that deal. So still, if they can leave the draft with a guy like Michkov over another top prospect and get Dubois, that's a pretty good day's work, in my opinion. So if they pull that off, that's going to be phenomenal. But is this going to be when the Dubois deal happens, or are they going to make it wait another year until he's a free agent? We'll have to wait and see. But I know Elliot Friedman went on record saying that he felt there was like a 90% chance that Dubois becomes a member of the Habs this summer and will be there for next year. So we'll see where that goes. Could be a very interesting time. If they're going to be busy making trades, will they target the guy who really wants to be there? It could be a huge help to their top 6. Let me know your thoughts on that and everything else related to the Habs offseason down in the comments. We'll talk about it further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with the latest news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.